The anomaly appeared on a Tuesday morning during Dr. Sarah Chen's regular sweep of deep space telemetry at the Arecibo Observatory. At first, she thought it was a glitch. The massive object emerging from behind Jupiter's orbit shouldn't have been there. Its heat signature was unlike anything she'd ever seen, and its velocity defied the laws of physics as she understood them. "Director Matthews," she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You need to see this." The facility director hurried over, coffee cup in hand. His eyes widened as he studied the readings. "How long has it been there?" "That's the thing," Sarah replied, pulling up historical data. "It wasn't there 10 minutes ago. It just appeared." Within hours, every major observatory on Earth had confirmed the observation. A massive object, approximately 3 kilometers in length, was moving through the solar system at impossible speeds. But that wasn't what terrified the world's scientific community. It was the fact that it wasn't alone. Behind the first object, hundreds more emerged, each identical in size and configuration. They moved in perfect formation, their trajectory unmistakably aimed at Earth. At the Pentagon's Emergency Command Center, General Diana Hayes stood before a wall of screens displaying real-time satellite feeds. "Give me something concrete, people. What are we looking at?" Colonel Jack Rivera, head of the Space Threat Analysis Division, stepped forward. "Ma'am, based on their movement patterns and energy signatures, we're looking at artificial constructs, ships for lack of a better word. Their technology is, well, it makes ours look like stone tools in comparison. Hostile. Unknown, but they're maintaining a tight combat formation. If I had to guess, I'd say they're ready for a fight." The first transmission came 3 days later, after the fleet had settled into orbit around Mars. It bypassed every encryption protocol, appearing simultaneously on every electronic display device on Earth. The image showed a creature that looked almost human, but not quite. Tall, elegantly proportioned, with silvery skin and eyes that seemed to glow from within. "People of Earth," it spoke, its words automatically translating into every known human language. "I am Supreme Commander Vixtal of the Concordiate. Your world stands at a crossroads." The beam paused, its luminescent eyes scanning invisible observers. "You have achieved something remarkable, something that happens only once in 1,000 civilizations. Your species has developed consciousness without losing its aggressive drive. You have achieved spaceflight without destroying yourselves in nuclear fire. You have created digital networks without surrendering to artificial intelligence." General Hayes leaned forward, her knuckles white, as she gripped the command console. This wasn't the threat they'd expected. "In short," Vixtal continued, "you have proven yourselves worthy of a choice. The Concordiate requires soldiers, warriors, those rare beings who can think and fight and create. We offer you this. Join us. Let your children train in our academies. Let your warriors serve in our fleets. In return, we will share technologies that will eliminate disease, hunger, and death itself from your world." The alien commander's expression hardened. "Or refuse, and we will take what we need by force. We will select the strongest among your young, and leave the rest to whatever fate befalls them. You have 7 planetary rotations to decide." The transmission ended, leaving humanity in stunned silence. In the following days, Earth's governments fractured. Some nations immediately pushed for acceptance, dazzled by the promises of advanced technology. Others called for immediate military action, despite the obvious technological gap. Streets filled with protesters supporting both sides. But in a secret facility beneath the Australian outback, Dr. Sarah Chen made a discovery that would change everything. She had been analyzing the alien fleet's energy signatures when she noticed something odd, a pattern in their power fluctuations that seemed familiar. "It matches," she whispered, pulling up decades-old data from the WOW signal and dozens of other mysterious astronomical phenomena that had puzzled scientists for years. They'd been here before. They'd been watching us for decades. General Hayes arrived at the facility within hours of receiving Sarah's report. Talk to me, Doctor. What exactly are you saying? Sarah pulled up a holographic display showing energy pattern comparisons. The Concordiate ships emit a very specific type of radiation when they use their faster-than-light drives. We've been detecting these signatures for years without understanding what they were. But here's the important part. They've been increasing dramatically. She brought up a graph showing a sharp upward trend. They're scared, General. Something is happening out there that has them desperately searching for new soldiers. We're not the first civilization they've approached, and we won't be the last. How does this help us? Hayes asked, studying the data. Because fear means desperation, Sarah replied, and desperation means mistakes. Look at these power fluctuations in their shield systems. They're running hot, much hotter than they should need to for simple orbital maintenance. They're keeping their defensive systems at maximum power constantly. They're expecting an attack, Hayes realized. But not from us. Sarah nodded. Whatever they're running from, it's made them sloppy. Their ships are powerful, but they're burning through energy at an unsustainable rate. If we refuse their offer, they'll attack, but they won't be able to maintain a prolonged campaign. They need a quick victory. Hayes straightened, her military mind already formulating strategies. So we don't give them one. How long can they maintain their current power levels? Based on these readings, no more than 2 weeks. After that, they'll either need to reduce power or return to their base for resupply. 2 weeks, Hayes mused. That's not much time to prepare Earth's defenses. No, Sarah agreed, but it might be enough time to convince them we're more trouble than we're worth. As the deadline approached, Earth's military forces began to mobilize, not in obvious ways, but in subtle ones. Civilian ships were retrofitted with experimental electromagnetic pulse generators. Orbital satellites were quietly repositioned, and in bases around the world, soldiers prepared for a fight unlike any in human history. The question wasn't whether humanity could win a direct confrontation. They couldn't. The question was whether they could hold out long enough to make the Concordiate reconsider the cost of their conquest. As the 7th day dawned, Earth's response was transmitted to the waiting fleet. It was short, carefully worded, and signed by every nation on the planet. We choose to remain free. The Concordiate's response was swift and brutal. Within hours of Earth's refusal, their fleet began systematically destroying military satellites, leaving gaping holes in Earth's defense network. But they didn't press their advantage immediately, a decision that puzzled military strategists until Dr. Sarah Chen's team made another breakthrough. Deep beneath the Australian facility, Sarah stared at her computer screen, her eyes burning from lack of sleep. The energy readings from the alien ships had changed subtly, confirming her suspicions. They're charging weapons, she announced to the crowded control room. But they're doing it slowly, carefully. They're trying to conserve power. General Hayes nodded, studying the tactical display. They're being cautious. Too cautious for an enemy with overwhelming superiority. She turned to Colonel Rivera. What's the status of Operation Blackout? Civilian power grids are being hardened against EMP effects, Rivera reported. We've relocated critical infrastructure underground, and the pulse generators are ready for deployment. But without our satellite network, we're flying blind. Hayes finished. Dr. Chen, how long until they're ready to attack? Before Sarah could answer, an urgent message came through from a research vessel in the Pacific. The transmission was garbled, but the excitement in the scientist's voice was clear. General Hayes, we found something. Something impossible. The discovery had been made by the deep-sea research vessel Horizon, conducting what was supposed to be a routine survey of the Mariana Trench. Instead, they had found structures, artificial structures, at depths where nothing should have survived. The architecture is unlike anything we've ever seen, Dr. Marcus Wong, the vessel's lead researcher, explained via video link. But the really interesting part is the age. Preliminary dating puts these structures at over 300,000 years old. Sarah leaned forward, her exhaustion forgotten. Are you saying there was an advanced civilization on Earth before us? No, Wang replied, his image flickering. I'm saying there was an advanced civilization under Earth's oceans, and they left something behind. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. As the Concordiate fleet maintained their holding pattern, Earth's most brilliant minds gathered in the Pacific to unravel the secrets of the deep-sea discovery. What they found defied explanation. The structures housed a vast archive of technological data, preserved in crystalline matrices that had survived millennia underwater. More incredibly, the information was readily accessible, almost as if it had been left specifically for humanity to find. It's a warning, Sarah explained to the Emergency Council, projecting images of the translated data. The civilization that built this, they called themselves the predecessors. They encountered the Concordiate too. But they didn't just fight them. They studied them. She brought up detailed scans of Concordiate ship designs. These are identical to the vessels currently orbiting Mars. The Concordiate hasn't innovated or improved their technology in over 300,000 years. They haven't needed to. Until now. General Hayes straightened in her chair. What changed? According to the archive, the Concordiate isn't just an alien empire. They're refugees, Sarah continued. They're running from something they call the Void Hunters. The predecessors encountered both species and realized something crucial. The Concordiate's technology, while incredibly advanced, is fundamentally flawed. She displayed complex energy diagrams. Their entire technological base relies on a specific type of quantum field manipulation. It makes their ships virtually invincible, except when it doesn't. The predecessors discovered that this same technology has a critical weakness. Under the right conditions, their quantum fields can cascade into total systemic failure. And they left us instructions on how to trigger this failure, Wang added, his excitement barely contained. But there's more. The archives contain designs for defensive systems specifically created to protect against Concordiate weapons. The predecessors didn't just leave us information. They left us a complete defense strategy. Hayes studied the data carefully. Why? Why help us? Sarah brought up one final image. A star chart showing the steady advance of something across the galaxy, something that even the predecessors feared. Because whatever the Void Hunters are, they're worse than the Concordiate. The predecessors believed that humanity might one day need to fight both threats. They left us the tools to survive the first battle so we'd be ready for the second. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just stumbled upon a weapon. They had discovered their place in a cosmic conflict that had been raging for hundreds of thousands of years. How quickly can we adapt this technology? Hayes asked. That's the brilliant part, Wang replied. The predecessors designed everything to be compatible with our current technological level. They knew we'd find this when we needed it most. With the resources of every major nation working together, we could have the first prototypes ready within days. Hayes turned to the assembled leaders. Then we have a choice to make. Do we use this knowledge to simply defend ourselves, or do we do what the predecessors couldn't? End the Concordiate threat once and for all. The room erupted in debate, but Sarah remained quiet, studying the ancient data. The predecessors had left them one final message, encoded in the deepest level of the archive. Choose wisely, children of Earth. The fate of more than your world rests upon your decision. As the arguments continued around her, Sarah noticed something else in the energy readings from the Concordiate fleet, a pattern she hadn't seen before. The aliens weren't just being cautious with their power usage. They were afraid. And soon, humanity would show them exactly why they should be. The conversion of Earth's remaining defense satellites began within hours of the discovery. Engineers worked around the clock, implementing the predecessors' designs with a speed born of desperate necessity. But the Concordiate wasn't going to wait forever. Multiple ships breaking orbit from Mars, Colonel Rivera announced, his voice tense. The tactical display showed 5 massive vessels moving toward Earth. Looks like they're done waiting. General Hayes studied the approaching ships. Time to completion on the satellite modifications. Another 6 hours minimum, Sarah replied, not looking up from her workstation, where she was coordinating the global engineering effort. We need to buy more time. Hayes nodded grimly. Then let's give them something to think about. Initiate Operation Thunderclap. Across Earth's surface, hidden electromagnetic pulse generators powered up. They weren't based on predecessor technology. They were purely human innovation, but they had been modified using the ancient data. The pulses they generated wouldn't harm the Concordia ships, but they would create enough interference to make detailed scans of Earth's surface impossible. The alien vessels slowed their approach as the electromagnetic storm erupted around Earth. Their energy signatures fluctuated as they attempted to penetrate the interference. They're trying to locate our defense installations, Sarah observed, watching the energy patterns. But they're burning through power faster than ever. The predecessors were right. Their systems are incredibly inefficient when stressed. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Wang's team had made another crucial discovery in the ancient archives. The predecessors didn't just study Concordia technology. He reported via secure channel. They understood their psychology. The Concordiate values efficiency above all else. When faced with an unexpected obstacle, they'll expend enormous resources trying to overcome it perfectly rather than finding a simpler solution. This insight proved accurate as the alien ships maintained their position at the edge of the electromagnetic storm, their sensors probing for weaknesses instead of simply pushing through. Every minute they spent analyzing the interference was another minute for Earth's preparations. But the Concordia wasn't completely idle. Their ships began launching smaller vessels, probe droids that dove into the electromagnetic chaos. Most were destroyed by the interference, but some made it through. Probes detected over major cities, Rivera reported. They're mapping our defenses the hard way. Let them look, Hayes replied with a slight smile. Everything they can see is exactly what we want them to see. The probe droids found what appeared to be hastily constructed defensive positions, conventional weapons and shields that would be useless against Concordia technology. What they couldn't detect, hidden beneath the electromagnetic storm and layers of oceanic interference, were the real preparations. The predecessors' archives had revealed that Concordia ships generated their defensive fields by creating localized quantum bubbles, spaces where the laws of physics could be selectively altered. It was incredibly advanced technology, but it had a fatal flaw. The quantum fields had to remain perfectly balanced. Any significant disruption would cause them to collapse catastrophically. In facilities around the world, engineers worked to modify existing satellite weapons with quantum destabilizers, devices that could create precisely targeted disruptions in the Concordia's defensive fields. The technology was elegant in its simplicity, using the aliens' own power against them. First wave of satellites is ready, Sarah announced. Testing shows 97% effectiveness against simulated Concordia shields. Hayes nodded. Deploy them quietly. Use the electromagnetic cover. As Earth's modified satellites moved into position, hidden by the very interference the Concordia was trying to penetrate, Sarah made another discovery in the predecessor data. The archives contain tactical information too, she reported. The Concordia always follows the same attack pattern. They'll send their smaller ships first, expecting minimal resistance. When those ships succeed, the main fleet commits to the attack. They've used the same strategy for thousands of years because it's always worked. Until now, Hayes said, because now we know exactly what they're going to do. How many satellites are combat ready? 30% of our network has been modified, Rivera reported. Another 40% will be ready within 3 hours. It's enough, Hayes decided. The predecessor's data shows that even a single quantum disruption can trigger a cascade effect through nearby ships. We don't need to hit their entire fleet. We just need to hit enough of them to show we can. As if on cue, the Concordia ships began launching their first wave of attack vessels. Hundreds of smaller craft emerged from the 5 capital ships, forming up into precise attack formations. They're exactly where the predecessor's tactical data said they'd be, Sarah noted, watching the enemy movements, right down to the spacing between ships. Hayes straightened, her decision made. All commands, prepare for immediate execution of Operation Starfall. Primary targets are the lead attack vessels. Secondary targets are the capital ship's propulsion systems. Time to throw a wrench into their perfect machine. The Concordiat attack fleet moved forward with mechanical precision, their formation an expression of mathematical perfection. They had no reason to expect anything different from what their probes had reported, a primitive civilization scrambling to mount a futile defense. They were about to learn that humanity had something the Concordiat had forgotten over their millennia of easy victories: the ability to adapt, to take an enemy's strength and turn it into a weakness. All units in position, Rivera reported, awaiting your command. Hayes took a deep breath, thinking of all the civilizations that had faced this moment before. But this time would be different. This time, humanity had the knowledge of the predecessors and the will to use it. Operation Starfall, she ordered, commence. The first shots of the battle weren't visible to the human eye. Modified satellites fired their quantum destabilizers in perfect silence, the beams invisible against the backdrop of space. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the lead Concordiat attack ship shimmered, its perfect shield bubble distorting like a soap bubble in a storm. The distortion spread across its hull, and in an instant, the massive vessel simply dissolved, its quantum-structured materials cascading into base particles. Direct hit on target Alpha, Rivera reported, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they'd just witnessed. Quantum cascade effect confirmed. The Concordiat fleet's reaction was immediate and exactly as the predecessors had predicted. Instead of retreating, they launched an all-out attack, their remaining ships accelerating toward Earth at full power. Energy spike detected, Sarah called out. They're diverting all power to weapons and shields. Hayes smiled grimly. Just like the archives said they would. They're making themselves more vulnerable with every moment. Execute Phase 2. Earth's modified satellites fired again, their quantum destabilizers targeting specific points in the Concordiat formation. The aliens' perfect battle lines became their weakness. As each ship dissolved, the quantum cascade rippled through nearby vessels, creating a chain reaction of destruction. But the Concordiat wasn't helpless. Their capital ships opened fire, energy beams cutting through Earth's atmosphere. Cities around the world activated their newly installed shield generators based on predecessor designs. The alien weapons splashed harmlessly against quantum-reinforced barriers. Shield network holding at 89% capacity, Rivera announced. Minimal damage to protected areas. In orbit, the battle took on a strange, almost beautiful quality. Each dissolved Concordiat ship created an expanding cloud of glittering particles, like new constellations being born. The remaining alien vessels began to break formation, attempting to avoid the cascade effects of their destroyed companions. They're adapting, Sarah observed, breaking up their perfect patterns to minimize chain reactions. The predecessors never saw them do this. Hayes leaned forward. Because no one ever destroyed enough of their ships at once to force them to adapt. They're learning. But so are we. Dr. Chen, what happens if we modify the quantum destabilizer frequency? Sarah's fingers flew across her console as she consulted the ancient data. The predecessor's notes suggest that the Concordiat ships can only maintain shield stability within a narrow frequency range. If we shift our attack pattern. She didn't need to finish. Hayes was already issuing orders. All units, implement frequency shift pattern delta. Target their new formations. The next wave of quantum destabilizers fired at varying frequencies, creating overlapping zones of disruption. Concordiat ships that had separated to avoid cascade effects now found themselves caught in a web of quantum instability. In the command center of the Concordiat flagship, Supreme Commander Vixtal watched in growing horror as his perfect fleet disintegrated. For the first time in recorded history, The Concordia was facing an enemy that could not only hurt them but understood their technology well enough to exploit its fundamental weaknesses. The alien commander made a decision. The remaining capital ships began to retreat, abandoning their smaller vessels to cover their withdrawal. But they had waited too long. Enemy flagship is charging its faster-than-light drive, Rivera reported. They're trying to escape. Not this time, Hayes declared. Dr. Chen, implement the predecessor's final protocol. Sarah activated a special set of satellites, positioned according to precise calculations found in the ancient archives. These devices didn't target the Concordia ships directly. Instead, they created a complex pattern of quantum disruptions in space itself. Quantum field lock established, she announced. Their FTL drives won't function within the disruption zone. The Concordia capital ships found themselves trapped, unable to escape. Their own technology turned against them. One by one, their shields failed, their hulls dissolving into clouds of shimmering particles. Supreme Commander Vic Stahl's final transmission was received by every communication device on Earth. How? How did you know? Sarah sent a reply, written in the ancient language of the predecessors. We had help. From those who came before. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the space around Earth was filled with a glittering nebula of dissolved Concordia ships, a testament to humanity's first major victory as a spacefaring civilization. But in the command center, celebrations were tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The Concordia would return, possibly with new tactics and modified technology. And beyond them lurked the mysterious Void Hunters, the threat that had driven the Concordia to such desperate measures. The predecessor's archives mention other catches, Sarah reported, studying the ancient data, hidden throughout the galaxy, each containing different technologies, different strategies. Hayes nodded, understanding the implications. Then we better find them before the Concordia does, and we better be ready for whatever drove them to fear the darkness between the stars. As cleanup operations began in orbit, humanity faced a new reality. They were no longer alone in the universe, no longer confined to their own world. They had inherited the legacy of an ancient civilization and the responsibility that came with it. The war wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But humanity had proven something crucial, not just to the Concordia, but to themselves. When faced with impossible odds, they could adapt, innovate, and overcome. The stars were waiting, and humanity was ready to claim its place among them. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of humanity's first faster-than-light vessel, the HSS predecessor. The ship had been constructed using a combination of human engineering and recovered Concordia technology, guided by the ancient archives. But unlike the rigid, mathematically perfect designs of the Concordia, the predecessor incorporated something uniquely human: adaptability. Final system check complete, Colonel Rivera announced from his station. The bridge crew, a mixture of military personnel and civilian scientists, worked with practiced efficiency. All quantum systems are stable. General Hayes, now Admiral of Earth's nascent space fleet, nodded in approval. Begin the countdown for our first FTL test. The predecessor wasn't alone. In orbit around Earth, dozens of similar ships were under construction. The quantum particles left behind by the dissolved Concordia fleet had provided enough raw materials to jumpstart humanity's space program by decades. But more importantly, the victory had united Earth in a way nothing else could have. Old rivalries and conflicts seemed petty in the face of galactic threats. The new United Earth Defense Force combined the best minds and resources from every nation. You know, Sarah said, studying the sensor readings, the predecessor's archives suggest there are at least 12 more catches hidden throughout this sector of the galaxy alone, each containing different technologies, different pieces of the puzzle. Hayes joined her at the observation window. And we're not the only ones looking for them. Our long-range sensors have detected Concordia activity in neighboring systems. They're searching too. They'll be back, Rivera added. And next time, they'll be ready for the quantum destabilizers. "Let them come," Hayes replied with confidence, "because next time, we'll be ready too." The predecessor's engines hummed to life, quantum fields forming and stabilizing in patterns that would have been impossible with pure Concordia technology. Humanity had taken the rigid, inefficient systems of their former enemies and improved them, making them more flexible, more efficient. "Admiral," a young lieutenant called out, "we're picking up something strange. A signal coming from deep space. It matches patterns in the predecessor's archives, but it's different." Sarah moved to the science station, her eyes widening as she analyzed the data. "It's an activation signal. The archives mentioned this. When a civilization successfully defends itself against the Concordiate, it triggers dormant beacons. There are others out there, other species who found predecessor catches, who fought back. Potential allies?" Hayes asked. "Or potential competitors," Rivera cautioned. "The archives warn about something called the Great Hunt, different species racing to find and claim predecessor technology before their rivals." Sarah continued studying the signal. "There's more. These patterns, they're not just communications. They're coordinates, locations of other catches, other civilizations. The predecessors created a network, a way for survivor species to find each other. And we just announced our presence to all of them," Hayes realized, "including the Void Hunters, whatever they are." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had won their first battle, but they had also drawn the attention of powers far beyond their understanding. The galaxy was not just filled with threats like the Concordiate. It was an arena where ancient legacies and modern ambitions collided. "Final preparations complete," Rivera reported. "FTL systems ready for activation." Hayes took her command chair. "Then let's not keep the galaxy waiting. Humanity has joined the game, and we're playing to win." The predecessor's quantum drives engage, creating a controlled distortion in space-time, unlike anything the Concordiate had achieved. As the ship prepared to make its first faster-than-light jump, Sarah reflected on how far they had come. 3 months ago, humanity had been alone, primitive by galactic standards. Now they were taking their first steps into a cosmic battlefield, armed with the knowledge of ancients and their own innovative spirit. "Multiple contacts detected at edge of sensor range," the lieutenant announced. "Energy signatures match both Concordiate and unknown configurations." "They're watching," Rivera observed. "Everyone wants to see what Earth does next." Hayes smiled. "Then let's give them a show. All stations, prepare for FTL jump. Let's see what other secrets the predecessors left for us to find." As the predecessor vanished into quantum space, its human crew venturing into the unknown, a message was automatically transmitted back to Earth. It was written in the language of the predecessors, but its meaning was clear. "The torch has been passed. The legacy continues. The fight goes on." In the vast darkness between the stars, ancient powers stirred. The Void Hunters turned their attention toward Earth, sensing new prey. The Concordiate marshaled their forces, preparing for revenge. And other survivor species, hidden in their own corners of the galaxy, wondered if humanity would prove to be ally or enemy in the great game of survival. But Earth was ready. They had the predecessors' technology, their own human ingenuity, and most importantly, the will to face whatever challenges awaited them among the stars. The age of isolation was over. The age of exploration, competition, and cosmic conflict had begun. And humanity intended to not just survive, but thrive.